You picked up your phone this morning before you said a single word to another human being, before you ate, before you fully woke up, maybe before you even consciously decided to. Your hand just moved, and within 60 seconds you were already inside someone else's highlight reel, absorbing someone else's opinion, reacting to something that had nothing to do with your actual life. And then you put it down and picked it up again 4 minutes later, and again after that. And somewhere between those moments the day started slipping. Your focus felt scattered. A low-level anxiety settled in that you could not quite name. And by evening you felt simultaneously overstimulated and completely empty. If this sounds familiar, it is not a coincidence, and it is not a personal failing. Something is being done to your brain deliberately, systematically, and at a scale that has no precedent in human history. And today we are going to show you exactly what it is. Let us start with dopamine because this is where the entire architecture of social media addiction is built. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter and it is widely misunderstood. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the thing your brain releases when something feels good. But neuroscientist Andrew Huberman and decades of research before him clarify something crucial. Dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure. It is the chemical of anticipation, of wanting, of the drive to seek. And this distinction changes everything about why social media is so uniquely dangerous to your brain. When you open an app, you do not know what you are going to find. Maybe something interesting, maybe something that makes you feel good, maybe nothing. And that uncertainty is not a flaw in the design. It is the most important feature of it. Psychologist B.F. Skinner demonstrated decades ago that the most addictive reward schedule is not constant reward and it is not no reward. It is variable reward, random intermittent payoff, the same mechanism that makes slot machines impersonal to walk away from. Every scroll is a pull of the lever. Sometimes you get something that makes you feel something. Most of the time you get nothing, but the possibility keeps the dopamine system in a state of constant activated seeking, and your brain cannot distinguish between seeking connection and seeking a jackpot. It just keeps pulling the lever. Now let us talk about what this is doing to your ability to think, specifically your attention span. Microsoft conducted a study that found the average human attention span had dropped from 12 seconds in the year 2000 to 8 seconds by 2015. 8 seconds. That is shorter than a goldfish. And that study is now over a decade old. The situation has only accelerated since. But here is the neuroscience of why this happens, because it is not just that we are distracted more. It is that the brain is being structurally rewired to prefer fragmentation. Every time you switch from one piece of content to the next, your brain gets a small dopamine hit from the novelty. New stimulus, new potential reward, and your brain, being the extraordinarily efficient learning machine that it is, begins to associate cognitive switching itself with reward. Sustained focus on a single thing starts to feel not just boring but actually uncomfortable, because sustained focus produces no novelty, and no novelty means no dopamine spike. So the brain begins to generate an internal itch every few minutes when you are trying to concentrate. A pull toward your phone, a need to check, a restlessness that feels almost physical. And most people interpret this as the task being boring or themselves being incapable of focus. But what is actually happening is that their brain has been trained to be allergic to the very cognitive state that produces every meaningful thing in human life. Here is the layer that damages people most deeply, and yet gets discussed the least. What social media does to your sense of self. Human beings have always engaged in social comparison. Leon Festinger identified this as a fundamental psychological drive in 1954. We evaluate ourselves by comparing ourselves to others, and this is a normal and often useful cognitive process. The problem is that social comparison was designed by evolution to operate within a local social environment. Your village, your tribe, the 50 to 150 people you actually knew. In that environment, comparison was calibrated to reality. You were comparing yourself to real people living real lives with real struggles visible to you. Social media has taken that process and subjected it to something it was never built to handle. You are now comparing your internal experience, which includes all of your anxiety and self-doubt and private failures, to the curated external highlight reels of millions of people simultaneously. Nobody posts their worst days. Nobody posts the relationship tension, the financial fear, the 3 a.m. spiral, the decade of work behind the overnight success. You see the result and compare it to your process. You see their peaks and compare them to your valleys. And your brain, which cannot fully distinguish between a curated performance and reality, runs the comparison and produces a devastating verdict. You are behind. You are less than. Everyone else has figured something out that you have not. And that verdict, delivered hundreds of times per day, produces something clinical researchers are now documenting at alarming rates. Multiple large-scale studies now link heavy social media use to measurable increases in anxiety, depression, and loneliness across all age groups, but with particularly devastating effects in adolescents and young adults. The landmark study by Jean Twenge, analyzing data from over 500,000 teenagers, found that adolescents who spent 5 or more hours per day on their devices were 66% more likely to have at least one risk factor for suicide, compared to those who spent 1 hour per day. The American Psychological Association has issued formal warnings. The U.S. Surgeon General has called for warning labels on social media platforms, citing mental health risks comparable to tobacco. And yet the average American adult now spends over 2 hours per day on social media, with teenagers averaging closer to 5. These are not people making bad choices freely. These are people caught inside systems that were engineered by some of the most sophisticated behavioral psychologists and technologists in the world specifically to maximize the time you spend inside them, regardless of what that time costs you. Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, said it himself in a recorded interview. The platforms were built to exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. The goal was always to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. Here is something that researchers call the brain drain effect, and it will change how you think about even having your phone nearby. A study published in the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research found that the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk reduced available cognitive capacity, even when the phone was face down and silent. Just knowing it was there was enough to partially occupy the part of the brain responsible for resisting the impulse to check it. Which means that even when you are not using your phone, if it is within your field of awareness, it is quietly consuming mental bandwidth. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of your focus, creativity, and rational decision-making, is running a background suppression process every time your phone is in the room. The researchers described this as your brain being like a computer running too many programs. Everything slows down. The quality of your thinking declines. Your capacity for the deep, sustained cognitive work that produces your best ideas, your clearest insights, and your most meaningful output is diminished, not by distraction but by proximity. This is not about self-control. This is neuroscience. And it means that protecting your cognitive capacity requires physical distance from your device during the hours when your best thinking needs to happen. So what do you actually do with all of this? Because awareness without action just adds another layer of anxiety to everything you already feel. The first and most important thing is to understand that you are not trying to fight your own weakness. You are trying to redesign your environment against systems that have billions of dollars and thousands of engineers working to keep you inside them, which means individual willpower is never going to be enough. You have to change the architecture. Delete the apps from your phone and access them only through a browser on a desktop if you need to access them at all. Because the friction of that extra step breaks the automatic loop that your phone has been trained into. Turn off every notification that is not a direct communication from a real person in your life. Because notifications are the cues that trigger the habit loop, and removing the cues is far more effective than trying to resist the loop after it is already running. Establish phone-free zones and times. The bedroom, the first hour of your morning, meals, these are not inconveniences. They are the windows in your day where your brain can actually recover and begin to rebuild the capacity for depth that constant stimulation has been eroding, and replace the scrolling time with something that requires your active cognitive participation. Reading, creating, moving, conversations without devices present. Because a brain given real input begins recalibrating toward depth faster than most people expect. Here is the truth that ties everything together. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. Not your money, not your time in the abstract, your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Your relationships are built from your attention. Your work is built from your attention. Your sense of self is built from the quality of thoughts your attention produces. And right now, there is an industry generating hundreds of billions of dollars per year by extracting that attention from you and selling it to the highest bidder. Every minute you spend scrolling is a minute of your one irreplaceable life being converted into someone else's revenue. That is not an exaggeration. That is the literal business model. You are not the customer, you are the product. And the most radical act of self-possession available to you in the modern world is to decide deliberately and daily where your attention goes. Not to outsource that decision to an algorithm that does not know you and does not care about you, and was never designed to serve your flourishing. You were built for depth, for real connection, for sustained creative thought, for presence in the actual life happening around you right now. The phone will always be there. Your life is happening whether you are present for it or not. And the question that only you can answer is which one you are going to choose.